Sisterly Love is the 21st and penultimate episode of the 7th season of Cheers. I didn't realise quite how close we were to the end of season 7, which is a bit upsetting. This is directed by, of course, the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it's a really solid episode, and it starts off with Rebecca announcing a new initiative for Cheers. If there's somebody in the bar who's unable to drive themselves home, they're going to make sure that there's somebody to drive them. And she says that she will drive this person home, and it turns out he lives in Philadelphia. So, not a bad way to start things off. There's only one narrative going through the episode, and at least one main narrative. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But first of all, Lilith comes in to get Frasier to take her mother to a hair appointment. Not really sure why it's a two-person job, but nevertheless, this is what's happening. Frasier makes a joke, and he apologises to Lilith for joking about his mother-in-law. He says that he was just doing it to make Norm and Cliff laugh, but they throw him under the bus and say a bunch of mean things that they say about his mother-in-law, and Lilith ends up grounding him. Woody then comes in. Sam's car alarm is going off. Sam's about to rush out to stop it, but then an attractive woman comes in at that moment, and suddenly there is something more important than his car. And Cliff asks Norm, how come Sam always spots the gorgeous ones first? to which Norm responds, because he doesn't spend all his time peeling dead skin off his elbows. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Obviously, Cliff is busy picking at his elbow skin, and it turns out that this woman is looking for Becky Howe, as she calls Rebecca, and Woody seems to recognise her, but it's not clear why. I will say the title of the episode probably gives it away. I could remember this episode very, very well from the last time I watched it, which is a shame because I wish I could remember my initial knee-jerk reaction to something that happens later on. But I also maybe think it's kind of obvious, but I'll talk about that when we get there. But we quickly establish that this is Susan Howe, Rebecca's sister. She's played by Marcia Cross. And I don't want to say too much about this, but maybe this will whet your appetite. James Burrows shares some interesting things about what they'd maybe planned to do with the character. It doesn't happen that way, but there were some suggestions for things that could happen with the character, and it's really interesting, and an interesting look at what could have been if they'd taken a different direction with Susan. So if you haven't read James Burrows' book, thoroughly recommend it. Definitely makes me look at the character in a different way, actually. And I have to say, Sam was pretty smooth. When he found out that Susan was Rebecca's sister, he asked if there were any more of her, because Sam likes sisters, and she says, afraid not, to which Sam immediately responds, you're more than enough. I have to say that's pretty smooth. And Woody then realises that he recognised her because she was an actress in the film Night of the Mutants. And Rebecca then comes in, and Sam covers her eyes to surprise her with Susan, and Rebecca's not happy. She has no interest in seeing her sister, and Sam obviously doesn't want them to be fighting. It will ruin his dream of two sisters, so he makes them go up to Melville's, and we find out that Susan keeps stealing, or I guess kept stealing, Rebecca's boyfriends when they were younger, and Rebecca delivers quite a speech to her and then leaves, and it's very smoothly done. And Sam sees this opportunity, and once he's alone with Susan, he says to her, I'm warning you right now, Missy, you better not try that with me. And she makes Susan believe that Rebecca is interested in Sam. Obviously, Sam's hope is that Susan will try and steal him from Rebecca. Frasier then comes into the bar, and he'd snuck out of the house, and he recognised Susan. He'd seen Night of the Mutants. He and Lilith rented it the other week, which seems a little out of character, but I guess people can have varied tastes. It's not something Frasier of the TV series Frasier would be watching, and he asks her for an autograph for Mother Sternin. Nice little part of the narrative just popping up now and again. Sam then tells the others about his plan, which he has called his masterpiece. And this involves Sam going into Rebecca's office to tell her that Susan asked him out and he agreed to go out with her, and Rebecca obviously doesn't want this to happen, so Rebecca decides that she's going to go out with Sam instead. Sam's obviously delighted. So Sam is going out with Rebecca, and then later in the evening he's going out with Susan, and the bar is in darkness. Sam's alone waiting for Rebecca, and Susan walks in. And as I said, I could remember very well how the rest of the episode unfolds, so I don't know if this was my initial reaction. But I feel like when Susan walked into the bar early, she said that she just couldn't wait. Obviously, she doesn't know Sam's going out with Rebecca. I feel like at that point, it becomes obvious that something is up. That there's something that Sam isn't quite in control of. Maybe not. Maybe I could just, because I could remember it, I'm looking into things that I might not have seen before. But I just feel like because it's something with the plan that didn't go right, it seems like Sam's not in control. And what could possibly happen with that? They go into the office, and Rebecca then obviously arrives for her date with Sam, and she catches Sam with Susan. And I feel like at this point, if it hadn't been obvious what was happening, it definitely becomes obvious, because Rebecca, not for the first time, pulls out a gun. Actually, there's an interesting story with Kirstie Alley and a gun and joining Cheers. But I'll say no more about that. That's, if you're unaware of the story, it's it's entertaining, definitely worth reading about, and I won't spoil everything. And she shoots Susan multiple times, and then she asks Sam, or demands of Sam, that he helps her drag the body out, and they do. They drag the body out of the office, and everybody, the gang at Cheers, all pop up behind the bar, including Lilith. Seeing Lilith behind the bar is quite an unusual thing, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And Sam is panicking, of course. And then Susan says, "I'm dead." And if it wasn't obvious, it definitely would be by that point that Rebecca hadn't actually shot her, that she'd actually been working with Susan. So I guess Sam got his wish. The sisters were finally bonding together rather than fighting, but it was at Sam's expense. And it's definitely quite a dramatic episode, and had they decided to do what they were going to do with the character of Susan, or what they'd considered doing, again, I don't want to say what it is, I don't want to spoil it if you decide to read Burrows' book, I wonder if this episode would have played out the same. I imagine it would have done. They definitely could have continued things after this, but I guess it's nice that Susan and Rebecca are friends again, and it was definitely a very dramatic episode. Personal highlights... Obviously, Norm's comment about Cliff picking his elbow skin. I rather enjoyed it. I also didn't write any of them down, but there were a lot of jokes at Carla's expense here. I don't know why I didn't write any of them down. I guess they didn't make me chortle as much as Norm's comment did, but there were a lot of jokes at Carla's expense that just, her facial expression every time, just absolutely fantastic. And obviously just how the whole final scene played out. I thought it was very, very well done, very well executed, and, well, the fact that Rebecca was just willing and able to fake shooting her sister and making it look so convincing honestly says a lot about Rebecca. But I really enjoyed this episode. I was really looking forward to rewatching it again. As I said, it's one that I remembered very, very well from when I watched it previously. And it doesn't surprise me. It's a very memorable episode. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Sisterly Love is an absolute delight. Kind of upset we're near the end of season 7. But to be fair, we do still have 4 more glorious seasons. And I've dropped my Cheers reviews down to 1 a week at the moment for the last... probably 7 seasons, the entirety. I've done 2 episodes a week because I'm obsessed. But I'm panicking that I'll be done with them pretty quickly, so I've dropped it down to 1 a week. Chances are when I get to season definitely 11, maybe even season 10, I might drop it down to twice a month. We'll see how it goes, but either way, I'm currently also in the process of thinking about transcribing the episodes to connect better with the dialogue, with the jokes, with the characters, and to also examine the episodes even more closely than I'm doing now. So Cheers will never end for me, but the end of the reviews will be devastating. But that's a long, long way off. For now, I can conclude by saying Sisterly Love is a pretty fantastic episode of Cheers.